Colson Whitehead's Sag Harbor is a quick bit of humorous nostalgia for anyone who's grown up in the 1980s. It is told from the point of view of a boy named Benji, who spends his summer in Sag Harbor, a quiet vacation town in the Hamptons. Benji and I share the same experiences. We both panicked when new Coke was introduced, fearing the end of the old regular Coke formula. A soda that Coca-Cola Company actually bragged that it had the same formula for like 99 years. I mean, the idea of it being replaced was fundamentally wrong to me as it was to Benji. We both kind of got up to the same things and remember similar experiences. I was raised relatively middle class, where Benji was an upper class kid, spending his days in private prep school in Manhattan and escaping to the vacation town of Sag Harbor during his summers. On the darker note, we both had complicated relationships with our fathers, both men haunted by demons. What differs and what I never had the burden of is that Benji's father's demons were the result of having grown up an African American man plagued with the burdens and fears of raising a family in relative safety, inheriting the phobias and justified concerns as the progeny of the American slave class. A man who, through hard work, and if you're an African-American man with a lucrative career, it certainly wasn't from inheritance. So through hard work, he ascended to a point where his family could vacation for the summer in the seaside town. You see, Sag Harbor isn't just a lovely vacation spot. It's one of the few African-American enclaves where black families could spend their summers in relative peace, free from harassment. Well, as much as could be expected in the 1980s. Benji and his brother Reggie go on adventures that are at sometimes concerning and funny. There's an incident with a BB gun that made me laugh and concerned at the same time. Like most of the kids in Sag Harbor who vacationed there for the summer, they seldom saw their parents and were kind of left alone, but were also kind of on their own, including finances. This meant the boys had to get summer jobs to stay fed and entertained. The adventures of Benji and Reggie are so familiar and endearing that I kept having flashbacks to funny moments during my summers growing up. You forget their race until bouts of racism actually pop up. It is impossible to be a minority in the United States, or anywhere I surmise, without that coloring part of your experiences. I know folks hate the entire "you wouldn't understand" argument, and I get it. I grew up half white and half Asian and was just white enough to be allowed to hang with my white friends in the deeply southern, deeply racist environment that was rural Alabama during the same time that Colson was kicking around Sag Harbor, i.e. the year 1985. And I get that a white person who has not experienced the receiving end of the brunt of systemic racism finds it unfair that his whiteness is perceived as privilege, especially if he's just struggling to pay the bills or his way out of debt. He certainly doesn't feel like he's benefited from the system. And hearing that he still would be worse off if he weren't white is probably infuriating. The beauty of this book is that it allows us to take a peek inside the upbringing of an African American, understanding the racism that he faced, but still relating to him on so many other levels. This book aims not to bestow guilt upon your non-black reader, but rather to get us to see the humanity in Benji and his brother, to identify with their little quirks and laugh at their misadventures. Benji's life, i.e., Colson's life, is one in which we get to experience a part of the broad spectrum of the African American experience, one that is filled with 1980s icons that any kid growing up at that time can identify with. The instances where racism pop up are apt and help us understand the characters better. As a fellow minority, I never understood nor honestly intrinsically sympathized with the black experience. I had to force myself to learn about it, constantly checking my prejudices to reach beyond my own quote-unquote Asianness. And I understand to some extent what it was like for Benji. Living in a relatively nice subdivision myself with tennis courts and a neighborhood swimming pool available only to the residents of that subdivision wasn't enough to shield me from constant racist remarks. But like Benji, when I think back on those days, I don't dwell on my mistreatment. I remember good things too. I remember the shenanigans. Benji's various adventures whisk you away like Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. His various concerns are those of any teenager, and despite not flinching from the black experience, Colson gives you the entire black experience. The joys, the fears, the zaniness of it all. This is a short book. After all, how long can a summer last? But like all summers, I wish it was longer. I put the book down wanting more adventures. Alright, so for the final review, let me preface this by saying something that I've said in previous videos before. My reviews tend to skew on the side of positive, with the exception so far of 1Q84. And that's because when I finish a book, it's usually because I've enjoyed the book enough, right? So you're seldom going to see me just poo-poo on a book. Plus, I don't like to do that anyways because authors really, they put their heart and souls into their works for the most part. And you have to kind of appreciate that, and I try to come from it from that point of view. But like I said, when I read books, if I don't like the book, I'm going to put it down. So you're seldom going to see me review a book that I really, really disliked, just because I never really finished them. The ones that I finish are the ones I tend to like. Anyways, this one is no exception. I loved this book. Readability, I gave it a full moon because it was easily readable. I identified with this character right away. It was just a great, quick read. Pacing, I gave it a half moon, and this is going to be a backhanded compliment because the only reason why I gave it a half a moon was because it was so easily readable and I liked it so much, but it just felt so brief and I wanted so much more. So again, this is a backhanded compliment towards the book. My interest in it was a full moon. I grew up during that period of time. I liked the adventures that he was on. He made the characters accessible and he gave you the experiences that you could identify with even if you didn't come from that background. Overall, I gave it a full moon as well. This is a quick, wonderful read. I really enjoyed this. I think that people who, if you've got some time and you want a quick read, you want something that feels a bit substantial but also light enough to where you're not going to walk away from it traumatized. This is just an excellent, excellent book. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much.